Hello and welcome to the second episode of my campaign diary. This is covering the first session of my Old School Essentials campaign. The last episode we talked about the session 0. So the session began with the characters arriving in Reestone, a small town known for its export of granite to the neighbouring city, which is some days' travel west. The town itself is built around a large hill, which at the top, the derelict remains of an ancient elven temple stand. Ivan, our magic user, had received a letter from a scholarly acquaintance named Velenthor, that Velenthor had paid a scout to venture into Folktongue Forest, which is just north of Reestone, and find the rumoured ancient tomb. But the scout has been gone for about a month with no sign of return, so he gave them a mission to learn about the whereabouts of the scout, and if they could continue the scout's work and do some research, he'll pay extra, as well as give them further information about another tomb which is in the area, so setting them up for further quests. The party agreed that they would learn what happened to Florin Ebenwood, that's the scout, but first they would have to look around Reestone and then reconvene at the local tavern, which is called the Devil's Delight. There they could find their lodgings for the evening. Ivan went to the top of the temple in the middle of the town, Old Elf Temple as it's called, to inspect it and learn some of its history. He spoke with an elderly couple who were walking around the temple, which is now a public garden, and they told him that the temple has been derelict for as long as anyone in the town has known, and that the temple itself is far older than the town. From the remnants of a statue, as well as the eroded elven script that's on the walls, Ivan was able to learn that the temple was dedicated to the Lady of Air and Wind, Aedri Fania, which is the elf goddess of the sky, wind, weather, that sort of thing. Almera, our paladin, went to the smithy, where he was looking for some armour upgrades. But the smith, sadly, is only used to crafting nails and horseshoes, that sort of thing. So he didn't have any upgrades, but he did have some leftover armour and weapons from a city hedge knight. The smith didn't really know much about this group of hedge knights that came through, other than that they talked about a watchtower and headed on the road eastwards. The armour had a symbol on it, a merlion, which is the upper body of a lion and the lower body of a sea serpent, but Almera was unable to identify anything else about what the armour represented. So he went to go and find Ivan, who is, the smart one of the group, and Ivan was able to point out that this is the house symbol of the Dialturks, who are the leaders of the city, the lake city of Brandmere, and the symbol is a lake monster known as Gobold. And they debated purchasing the armour for future, maybe even stealth use or anything like that, but with little gold to the name, decided against it. So this city that is to the west of them, Brandmere, this lake city that the town has trade with, it seems like there has been some, at least militia presence or something like that in the area recently, who then headed east. So meanwhile, Vix, who is the thief of the group, went to the general store with a bag full of wine, 26 bottles of wine actually to be precise, which she had stolen from the last mission, their starter mission, when they were doing some stuff in a tavern and fighting some giant rats. She had stolen a lot of the, or pickpocketed rather, a lot of the wine from the shelves and hidden them in a sack. And she managed to sell them for a profit of 6 gold actually. In total getting 31 gold, so 6 gold more than the recommended retail price, I guess you'd call it. Near the shop also was Gumbo, the halfling, who was wading through the local fountain and collecting copper and gold pieces, or copper and silver pieces, that had been tossed in there for luck. When he was spotted by a passerby, he managed to convince the woman that he was simply just doing some maintenance, and after which he headed to the shop, the general store, and used his newfound cash to buy 2 bottles of wine, a lantern, and various flasks of oil. Almera and Ivan also then went to the shop and stocked up on some general supplies. The party then regrouped at the Devil's Delight, where they asked the innkeeper about the scout. They learned that Florin Ebenhood had been seen talking to Old Demdike, a crone who many in the village do not trust, but she's someone said to know the history of the land. As well as this, the scout had been seen heading to the general store. The innkeep told them about other rumours in the area, that they've always really had a lot of trouble with goblins who live in the mountains, and that a dormant mine south of the village that miners had looked into to maybe try and reopen had been occupied with some dark figures inside, who have only been seen at night as well. The miners didn't go inside upon seeing these figures. They thought best not to intrude. In addition to that, a church which is 3 miles southwest has been having some trouble with grave robbers, but not much more was known about that. The innkeeper also sold them on his tavern's namesake, telling them that there's a devil statue in the basement that grants wishes once every 30 years, but you've got to be careful what you wish for. It's 1 gold piece to see the statue, and 2 of them paid to go down and have a look at it. Ivan wishing to unlock the secrets of magic, and Gumbo in a drunken state and slightly suspicious that this was a scam, wishing for the devil itself to be set free in the body of a villager. But nothing seemed to happen. So following this, party left the tavern and made a route southwards, first going to the mine. Then they decided they were going to go to the cottage of Old Demdike, which is in a forest. And lastly, east towards the Church of the Cerulean Sky to learn about the grave robberies there. At the top of the mine, there's a series of buildings. Vix snuck in through a hole in the ceiling to the bunk lodge and found a hidden ruby worth 100 gold. After this, the party went to the captain's quarters and found a series of papers describing the transport between a mine and the city of Brandmere. These papers were dated about 80 years ago. The captain also complained about insubordination from a miner who had stolen a ruby from the mine itself. As they were searching through, they were also attacked by a yellow mould that got a lucky hit on Almera, but the party soon vanquished it with their flask of oil. They went to the ore storage building and also found another yellow mould, but before any fight could start, they narrowly avoided it and burnt the house down before the spores became a problem. Ivan then used various blankets and cloths to make masks for the party to prevent anyone from breathing in spores in the future. The party then headed into the opening of the mine and lit their lanterns. As they traversed their way down the right-hand passage, there was the jingle of chimes which played. A trap had been set off and alerted the dark figures that the party was here. So I really enjoyed the first session. I think it went quite well. It was nice to give them a little bit more freedom, just to introduce them to different parts of the town and then say, here you go, what do you want to do? All of them, I think, quite comfortably sort of got into talking with NPCs. Ivan was very much ready to, okay, this is my mission. I want to learn this about the town and I'm ready sort of a go-get-em. Almera also knows that he is persistently wanting to try and get some kind of upgrade in armor, maybe find some magic armor or something like that, and so he's gunning to try and do this. For Gumbo, he's really just looking to cause some trouble and some mischief, and Vix is kind of looking to steal and get rich from it. So it's nice to see that they've all got these kind of their own goals, and when kind of given some free rein, they each went off independently and found something to do and asked a lot of good questions just about the town, about, you know, oh, what does this look like, and what can I find here, that sort of stuff. They were quite good at planning as well, from what directions they were wanting to do. They kind of set up, they were like, okay, so this building, the mine is south of us, the forest cottage is further south in a forest, and then the church is southwest of us, so we'll go and we'll loop around and see how long that takes us, and if so, you know, make it back round. Yeah, there's a lot of creative thinking as well, I quite like that, and everyone got to use some of their abilities as well. So detect magic was thrown off when they were in the tavern and they sensed like a dark magic coming from the statue, so that was kind of nice to see. Vix, being a thief, got to try her hand at climbing up walls. She scaled the building to the lodge up at the mine, as well as picked the lock. And something else I forgot to mention was this ruby that she had found. She planted it on Gumbo, whilst Gumbo has been in character, blackout drunk basically the whole session. He was drinking a lot at the tavern. He bought those bottles of wine and chugged them. So for Gumbo's sort of crazy antics are a drunken fueled kind of trickster rampage, I guess. So this ruby was then planted by Vix on Gumball so that no one would suspect that it was Vix that took it. And after reading the papers and the party sitting down to rest, suddenly this ruby showed up, and Gumball was like, oh, where did this come from? It's also, for me, quite fun to start getting used to using the dungeon rules. These, like, rolling for wandering monsters. I got to do that unbeknownst to the party. Them spending time resting both outside and in the buildings, and they were ripping off doors a lot and things and breaking them open. Almera, liked to use his strength, his open door skill. Because they were quite loud and they didn't try be stealthy when going round in this kind of open space, the creatures within the cave, which they suspect to be goblins but don't know the true nature of yet, which I can't wait to reveal because it might not be goblins, it might be something else. They were previously alerted and prepared for at least some of them prepared, and now that this trap has gone off, this jingle alarm, the party now knows that they have been made. And it's going to be interesting to see what they decide to do now that they're in this dungeon. And kind of going from room to room to room, being an actual dungeon. It's also, funnily enough, not the dungeon that I expected them to do. I thought that they would firstly go off and try and do this Flora and Ebonhood questline before they did any of the other things. So it's interesting to see that they've taken all the information, they've mapped out a route to go, okay, we'll learn and we'll do this and we'll maybe get some gold and treasure from this. And we can use that so then when we actually go after Flora and Ebonhood, we are, we're better equipped for it, which is nice to see. They also, something else I forgot to mention was that they went back to the provisions shop, Barthen's Provisions, which is, if anyone's played Lost Mines of Phandelver, it's the same thing. I just, I was like, well, snip this, use that. They went there and they learned that the scout had been there, that she had bought some ammunition for her bow, some arrows, as well as some iron rations. So those are long-lasting rations. And she bought about a week's worth of rations. So it's a bit troubling. They've found that she's been gone a week or a month now, and she had a week's worth of rations at the least. And she's still not returned. So it'll be interesting to see where they go forward now. Almera also is a little bit hurt from this yellow mold, so it'll be interesting to see what they do now that, a fight is very close to being commencing, pretty much picking up next session with one, and Almera is hurt. Luckily, he has a little bit of healing being a paladin, but at level 1, if one attack can take you out. So it's going to be fun to see what they do with this. And I'm looking forward to just seeing what other antics they get up to and how they're going to interact with other characters such as Old Demdike when they eventually get around to meeting her. She's a bit of a wily one. I won't say much other than that, but she's viewed as being a crone by the village. She's an outsider herself. So she has a different outlook on the villages and the history of it compared to maybe some of the scholars that have read about the area or the villagers themselves who, don't exactly like her. So there's a bit of a dichotomy there, and I'm interested to see maybe how the party will maybe even split morally about Old Demdike, whether they'll side with her or side with the village or whatnot. So that's going to be fun to see as well. Because that is if they actually get out of the dungeon alive, because like I say, there's a lot of monsters in there. It's a little bit of a big dungeon. And there's traps and the sort, so hopefully they learn from the mistakes. From 2 times now walking down narrow pathways, both in the session 0, where I was sort of training them, put them a little bit on training wheels, and now these are 2 traps that have gone off simply because when I asked them what are they doing, the Almera said that he was walking down the corridor, lantern lit, and the rest of the party said they were just following suit. So I said, okay, right, roll me a D1, not D1, roll me a D6, because that was my trap thing, and I thought, okay, well, seeing as none of them told me that this is what that they were looking for traps, none of them attempted to. I mean, hey, they've got a thief for the reasons of this. Because none of them said this, the trap went off. If that happens again, maybe later down in the dungeon at another part, something bad could happen. It could result even in a character death. Like I say, all of them have under 10 hit points, right? Almera, I think, he has the highest amount of hit points with 8, I want to say, but he is also damaged the minute, and the first round of combat, he's going to have to heal, or if he gets hit, he could just die. I have stressed to the party that, retreating is an option. To run away, you can do that, and to think about fights, less so in a sporting manner. This is something that I've heard about from Questing Beast's channel when talking about the OSR and newer games. 5e, you tend to look at combat as a sport, right? It is this fair game of balance, while in the OSR, it's fight dirty, it's kill or be killed, it's war. You've got to use what you have and your intuition and your creative thinking to be able to overcome these challenges that are ahead of you. So that was my first session. Setting things up, a little bit of RP, some exploration around this town, lots of rumours, snippets of lore that was kind of dropped that have piqued the interest outside of the game. Some of the players have chatted to me about one or two things, saying, oh, this is something I'm interested in looking at. Ivan has especially said that, hearing about the elves and this ancient temple and some elves being maybe in the forest and stuff, he wants to learn about that. I believe they're also quite interested in maybe going to the mountains to the north and fighting off some goblins and trying to stop goblin raids and things like that, as the innkeeper told them that goblins are just kind of a problem. If you're on the roads, they'll be they're like bandits, right? There are also bandits as well, but shake you down. Also, farmers have had things stolen and stuff, and people tend to just blame the goblins as a cause of all. So it should be interesting to see what happens there. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing where they're going, if they will survive, and hopefully, fingers crossed, they learn from their mistakes. Because if they don't learn with this slight slap on the wrist, then they're gonna end up dying. It's a sad thing to say, but I'm a big softie when it comes to being a GM. I've mentioned in the past that normally I play more like narrative systems, and I like to tug on the strings there, but when it comes to actually dealing like death blows and stuff, while it has happened a few times in different games I've run, I do often let people get away with just a little bit more than maybe I should do, and that's something that I'm wanting to do less so now. I want to show them the world is a threat. You can't just wander into a dungeon to get treasure and expect to become rich like that. You have to use your wits to be able to do that. A little bit of luck. Thanks for watching, and I hope you join me next time. Please like and subscribe. It's be a big help getting this out there. Tell your friends if they're interested, and I'll see you next week. Take care.